So, guys, in the last video, we broke down what Daronte Jones is actually trying to build on defense and why his scheme is so different from what Washington has run in the past. But that also raises an important question. Which players actually fit this system the best? Because not every defender is built the way Jones wants to play. Some players could look completely different in this scheme, and a few of them might be on the verge of a breakout season simply because they're finally in the right system. So, now I am going to break down the biggest defensive breakout candidates for the Commanders and why Daronte Jones' defense could help unlock the best version of each of them. What's up, Commanders Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Commanders. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, let's start with the guy who I think benefits the most from this scheme change, and that is Mike Sainristil. Now, if you've watched his tape from last season, you already know this guy can make splash plays. He finished 2025 with 4 interceptions, which was 8th most in the entire NFL, along with 12 passes defended, a forced fumble, and 50 solo tackles. That's real production. That's a guy who knows how to find the football. But here's the part of the story that doesn't get talked about enough. While he was racking up those turnovers, he was also giving up a good amount of coverage. Pro Football Focus had him allowing a passer rating of 0.09 when targeted, with 67 catches allowed. So, this isn't a clean case where the production is already elite and all he has to do is repeat it. This is a case where the splash plays are real, but the consistency in coverage has to catch up. And that's exactly why the scheme change matters so much for him. Mike Sainristil is at his best when he can see the play develop, diagnose it, and trigger downhill on the football. He's not a big press man corner who's going to win one-on-one battles against bigger receivers on every single play. That was never his profile coming out of college, and it's not going to suddenly become his profile now. What he is smart, competitive, instinctive, and versatile, and that's exactly why Adam Peters valued him in the first place. If Daronte Jones builds a defense that leans on more pressure, more disguise, more zone match concepts, and more chances for defensive backs to play with their eyes and their instincts, that's the exact environment where Mike Sainristil thrives. This isn't asking him to become someone he's not. It's putting him in position to do more of what he already does well, just with better structure around him. If he can tighten up the coverage numbers this year, meaning fewer yards allowed and fewer touchdowns given up while still stacking those turnovers, something like 70 tackles, 12 passes defended, 4 interceptions, and a couple of forced fumbles. That's when you stop calling him a boom or bust type of player and start calling him one of the more complete defensive backs in this league. That's the breakout. Not just more splash, but splash plus stability. And I want to be clear why this scheme fit matters so much, because it's not just scheme in a general sense. It's about what this specific defense is asking its defensive backs to do on a snap-by-snap basis. When you're playing more zone match coverage, you're allowing a player like Mike Sainristil to read the quarterback's eyes, read the release of the receiver, and then explode toward the football once he's identified where it's going. That is a completely different mental process than being asked to turn and run with a receiver down the field on an island. One plays to his instincts, the other plays to his limitations. So when people talk about a player finally being put in the right situation, this is what that actually looks like on the field, not just a buzzword. Now, part of this equation depends on Trey Amos staying healthy and holding down that outside cornerback spot. If Trey Amos comes back and gives Washington a legitimate outside corner, then Mike Sainristil doesn't have to be pulled in 10 different directions trying to plug every hole. He can be used more deliberately, whether that's inside, outside, or moving around to match up directly on receivers and trigger from the slot. That's when a good young player turns into a matchup problem for opposing offenses, and honestly, I think both of these guys deserve to be mentioned in the same breath when we talk about which defensive backs could take the biggest jump this season. Next, let's talk about Johnny Newton, because to me, he might be the best scheme-fit breakout candidate on this entire roster. This guy has always had that explosive first step off the line of scrimmage, and that was never in doubt. What was in doubt was whether the scheme around him would ever let that burst actually show up on the field, instead of getting buried in a system that didn't know how to feature him. For 2 years, it felt like his talent was there, but it kept getting bottled up. Now, with Daronte Jones running things, along with the defensive line coaching staff working to sharpen his technique, I think this is the year that talent finally gets unlocked the way it should have been from the start. When a scheme actually knows how to feature a player's strengths instead of asking him to play a role that doesn't fit, that's usually when you see the jump. I think Newton is exactly that kind of player heading into this season. Think about how frustrating it is as a fan watching a guy consistently win off the snap, consistently collapse the pocket in the first half second of a play, and still not see that show up in the box score. That's been the story with Newton for a couple years now. It's not a talent problem, it's been a fit problem. And fit problems get solved when the scheme changes, when the coaching changes, and when a player finally gets asked to do what he's naturally good at instead of being forced into a system that doesn't complement his game. If this coaching staff can build stunts, twists, and pressure packages that put Newton in one-on-one opportunities instead of asking him to just hold the point of attack over and over again, you're going to see the sack totals and the pressure numbers climb in a way that finally matches what the tape has shown for a while now. Then there's Sonny Styles, who I've talked about as one of the most important breakout candidates on this entire defense, right there alongside Trey Amos. Now, here's the thing about Styles. He doesn't need to be a Pro Bowl caliber player as a rookie for this to be considered a success. He doesn't need to win Defensive Rookie of the Year either. The opportunity in front of him is real, and if he can take advantage of it, even without those flashy accolades, it still matters in a massive way for this defense. Sometimes the most important breakout isn't the loudest one. It's the one that stabilizes a position group that's had way too many questions attached to it over the last couple of seasons. The way I look at it, a rookie stepping into a new scheme under Daronte Jones doesn't need to look perfect every single week. What matters is the trajectory. Is he getting comfortable with the disguises? Is he processing faster in week 10 than week 2? Is he becoming a guy the coaching staff trusts in bigger and bigger moments as the season goes along? If that trend line points up, then by the time you get to December, you're talking about a rookie who's already become a foundational piece of this secondary rather than just a name people were excited about back in April. That's the kind of quiet, steady growth that changes how an entire position group is viewed heading into the following offseason. Now let's shift over to the guy who I think has the narrowest path on this entire list, and that's rookie defensive lineman Joshua Josephs. I want to be honest with you about how I'm framing this one because his breakout doesn't look like the others. This isn't about him suddenly becoming a double-digit sack guy or forcing his way into being a household name by December. His breakout is simply about earning a real role in that defensive line rotation, and honestly, that alone would be a real accomplishment given the room he's stepping into. Washington drafted him in the 5th round, number 147 overall, out of a 4-year career at Tennessee where he finished with 10 of 4 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and 8 passes defended. He was a 2-year starter there, and he actually led that Tennessee defense with 3 forced fumbles back in 2024. So, there's experience here, there's production here, there's clearly something worth developing. But here's what makes his path complicated. Washington did not draft him into an empty room. This front office went out and aggressively addressed the front 7 this offseason, bringing back Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise Jr., while adding several other veteran pieces to that group as well. So realistically, Joshua Josephs is likely competing for a backup rotational role behind a group of proven veterans, not walking into a starting job. What makes him intriguing, though, is the tool set. He's long, he plays with real closing burst, and he has a knack for getting the football out, something he showed with those forced fumbles in college. The scouting profile on him coming out of the draft described him as a long, upright edge with a massive wingspan and real closing burst. But also someone who still needs to add size and become less predictable as a pass rusher. That tells you exactly what this year is about for him. It's not about him suddenly becoming a finished, technically polished product. It's about taking those raw tools and getting just good enough, fast enough to carve out a real role. If he can be active for around 250 snaps this season, contribute close to 18 tackles, a couple of tackles for loss, a sack or 2 force a fumble, and provide real value on special teams, that's a breakout for a 5th-round rookie stepping into a stacked room. That's the kind of season where you look back a year from now and say, okay, this guy is going to be a real part of the rotation moving forward. It's not a flashy path, it's a quiet one. But it's there, and for a Commanders fan who pays close attention every single week, it's one worth watching. And honestly, that's what makes a pick like this fun to track over the course of a season. Nobody expects a 5th-round defensive lineman to walk in and be the guy right away. But every single defensive line room in this league has that one young player who slowly starts earning more snaps as the weeks go on, simply because he keeps making the most of the opportunities he's given. If Joshua Josephs can show flashes early in camp, if he can win a rep here, get an early pressure there, and prove he belongs on special teams from day one, that's exactly how a young player starts climbing a depth chart that looked crowded back in the spring. It won't happen overnight, and it shouldn't be expected to. But watch the snap counts as the season rolls along, because that's where you'll see this breakout actually take shape. So here's my big takeaway looking at this defense heading into camp. Washington doesn't need every single one of these guys to become a star this season. Mike Sainristil doesn't have to become a shutdown corner overnight. Trey Amos doesn't have to be a Pro Bowler in year 2. Johnny Newton doesn't need double-digit sacks. Sonny Styles doesn't need to win rookie awards. And Joshua Josephs definitely doesn't need to be a household name by January. What this defense needs is for enough of these guys to take that next step, whatever that step looks like for each individual player, because their paths are all different. Some need a clearer role, some need better health. Some just need the right scheme finally built around them. And if enough of them get there, this roster is going to look a whole lot different heading into 2027 than it did walking away from a rough 2025 season. The real question isn't whether Washington has breakout candidates on this defense, because they clearly do. The real question is whether Daronte Jones's new scheme is actually going to be the thing that finally turns that potential into production. And based on everything I've broken down here, I think there's a real case that it can.